Welcome back to Localite, talking with JoAn Henricks of the old St. Peter's landmark here in the Dalles. And let's talk about some of the unique aspects of the building. I mean, obviously there's the 179-foot steeple, unique in itself, but some of the things inside, I mean, the stained glass windows are gorgeous. Tell me a little bit about those.
So there are about 44 stained glass windows and 6 what are called rose windows, round windows. And those were done by some artists in Portland called the Povey brothers around 1900, well, obviously 1898. They were a very artistic group of glass makers there. There are several Portland churches have Povey glass. They did everything with glass that you can do as far as an art form is concerned. So you get to see it all if you go in and look at the windows. Most of the windows were donated by families in honor of their pioneer ancestors in the Dalles. And there are a couple of windows that have little angels or cherub faces on them, and those faces were actually modeled after one of the Povey brothers' children. So you can see at least 2, maybe 3 different angels, and those were his daughters.
They were angels to him, at least.
Angels to him. Leaded windows like that do wonderful with time, but they do start to move with time. Lead softens and the framing softens. After the nonprofit took over, we had some plexiglass protective windows put on the outside so that from the weather and that they wouldn't be damaged so much. But over time they've started to buckle and warp, and we need to take them down and have them re-leaded in Portland, and that's a task that's an ongoing business with us.
Yeah, well, and I think I read that it's like $9,000
It's $9,000 for a pair set, which people would see as one window to have them re-leaded. And it's a major artwork in itself. There are a couple upstairs, if you look, you can actually see where the lead's sort of starting to buckle in the window. And over time, I mean, that's going to put stress on the glass, and the glass can crack, and you have a problem.
It's such a beautiful piece of art.
But everything in the building is original. Nothing's been replaced. The
which
roof
is hard
on the
to believe. I mean, something from 1898, especially in the Columbia Gorge, to still be intact like that.
It was quality workmanship and quality materials. And the roof had to be replaced in 1995. It was Spanish galvanized tile. Obviously, the original factory was no longer in business, so we found something as close to it as possible made in Canada, and had that tile put on. But everything else, interior and exterior, is the same. Originally, the church had wood railings and altars. And then in about 1937, a couple of local families went to Carrara, Italy, picked out the marble, picked out the artisans, had the marble carved, put the artisans and the marble back on the boats, and came back home. And if you remember 1937, this was boat traffic. It's pre-World War II. Europe is not in great shape. And here's this family and these artisans coming back with the marble for the church. It is gorgeous.
I'm just trying to imagine what that would have cost.
Well, whatever it was well worth it. It is just magnificent.
Yeah.
And it is all there today. You will never see anything like that again.
So this actually rivals probably some of the chapels and
it has to.
Churches in
the marble that they selected, Carrara marble, is what the Pieta and some of the famous statues in Europe are carved from. I mean, Carrara is the choice A #1, A+++ marble. You don't get any better. The statues, there are about 6 or 7 statues, and they're all about life size. They're all made of plaster except the Virgin Mary. And the Virgin Mary is made of wood. She was carved from the keel, that's the big beam of a sailing ship, that went down in the San Francisco Bay in the 1850s.
Really?
And a couple of local families had a family member, a relative on the ship, who was saved. And so as a thanks that their relative was saved, the local families had the keel hauled up and carved into the statue and dedicated, and it's there in St. Peter's today. So
oh my gosh.
The Virgin Mary statue is still there.
Do many people know this stuff? Because
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, which is probably why you're here on the show.
Right. I mean, we have just some wonderful treasures here in the Dalles, and Old St. Peter's Landmark is a treasure box full of all these jewels.
Right, yeah, because it's not only a former church with all that history,
right,
but it's, you know, like you mentioned, the stained glass windows, the
statue
of Mary,
the marble,
all of these things. So you get to almost have a museum art exhibit
museum
type
experience right here. We used to laugh because we couldn't wait to get out of the Dalles. I grew up here, and and we were going to go see the world. Well, a lot of us went out and saw the world, and we came back and we went into St. Peter's, and we said, well, big deal, we had it all right here.
Yeah? So you went over and experienced that stuff firsthand, and was like,
came home, it was like, wait a minute. The architecture came from some plans from Westphalia, Germany, and the inside is about 40 feet high at the highest point. The ceiling is decorated pressed tin. And
it's beautiful too. Yeah.
A couple of things I wanted to remember: the organs. There's the original organ that was a little tiny thing that you could throw the legs out, and Father Bronquist and later Katie Fleck-Corchi could put on the back of their buckboards and take around the organ territory to do music lessons or mass.
Oh yeah.
The current organ was installed in 1925. It's a Kilgan organ. And that company made organs in the early 1900s for music houses and churches around the United States. The same brand of organ is in Carnegie Hall and also in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City.
Really?
So we have it all here at Old St. Peter's Landmark, and I don't think we really know what we have. And it's still used today.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful organ. So.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, I certainly had no idea. And I have been, like I said, you know, I was part of a wedding in the church and had no idea about all of this. So it's been interesting.
The other thing that's interesting is the painting. Some original stenciling was done along the windows as the church was first dedicated, but over time people decided that it would be good to have some more intricate painting. So in the early 1950s, an artist named Theodore Brosh was hired, and he put up a scaffolding, and it was actually up inside the church for 2 years. And I remember it as a small child. I mean, we went to church, we used it as a church, but the scaffolding is up there. It took him 2 years, almost like Michelangelo, to paint the top of the ceiling portion of our church. And today we have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, our Lord. We have cherubs. It is truly beautiful. It's an art form in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to continue talking about it. We'll talk a bit more about some of the modern day things and stuff when we return. So you guys, we'll be right back.